Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have an interview with science fiction author Griffin Barber from Baen Books. Griffin, thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much.
So my first question for you is, how did you first become an author? Was it something that you had meant to do your whole life, or was it something that you just kind of got into eventually?
No, I've always thought I might want to. I certainly kind of worked my life around wanting to write, but never really getting anything done until I guess it was the mid 2000s. A friend of mine was working on the third iteration of Twilight 2000, the role-playing game, tabletop role-playing game, and he suggested me to his bosses that I should write some fiction for that, and it relit the spark that I wanted to do this, and I started writing more extensively, kind of all the time, mainly on my commute when I was taking the local area transit back and forth to work. So that was my first shot, and then depending on how convoluted we want to get on it, I call Charles Gannon, I call him the Rainmaker.
Okay.
We met at a World Fantasy in 2009 or 11, something like that, and he read some of my blog stuff, and he was really interested, and we talked for quite a bit, and he's like, you should write for the 1632 stuff, and I was like, time travel. I don't like time travel. And besides, I'm writing a novelist. I'm a novelist. I don't write short fiction. And a year later, after I had not had any success selling anything, he's like, "So how's that going for you?" And I was like, "Well, not so hot." And give me the information for the magazine. And so the very first short story I ever submitted, I was successful at getting published. So
Nice. It is sad how hard it is to break in, but the nice thing is, from what I've seen, especially with a lot of the Baen authors, is there's a lot of collabs that end up people helping other people, and you first start working on some collabs, and that leads to original stuff, and you work on short stories, and then eventually you work on novels. So I do like that there is this element of the authors are willing to work with other authors a lot, and I know that I know Eric Flint. I know he did a ton of collabs, and so you did do collabs with him on the Ring of Fire world, as you were saying.
Yep.
I believe you did two books, two novels.
so far, I've got
So
a
far.
third one's under contract, and I'm working on it presently.
Okay. Is that one? Are you working on that one by yourself, or is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the idea is that Eric had already done a lot of research on Persia and parts of the Middle East that I had no background and education on, and so he was going to do all that research for me, and I was going to write it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he passed before we could convey any of that knowledge to me. So I've been backlogged trying to get up to date, up to speed on those factors. But the thing about Baen and also with especially the 1632 universe, it's an open universe. It's more than 7 million words in print, and he's his heirs and successors in 1632 beyond, and Tony keeping the torch alight for trying to work through and continue to publish the books. I'm hoping it's got a bright future because it, as you said, it's given opportunities to, I believe that there's 150 some odd authors who were published by 1632 and beyond, and a huge percentage of those authors are first-time authors. So you just don't get that anywhere else. And as far as Baen is concerned, I mean, even back when it first started under Jim Baen, it has a record of amazingly good collaborations. Dave Drake's and Steve Sterling's the General series.
Yeah.
I mean, just so many, and the War World series with Parnell, and just amazing, like you said, collaborations and universes that they opened up to other authors to make a mark in. You just don't see it anywhere else. and it leads to a rising tide raises all boats. It's much less like, well, you got this and I didn't get that, and that kind of thing. It's much more about we all profit from being able to kind of help each other out and see things that are going to happen. And again, Chuck Gannon is a perfect exemplar of this, because even when that was happening, he had when he had convinced me to go ahead and write the first short story, which is, as I said, was published. He then he was approached by a game company, and the game company said, "We'd really like you to write for our game that's coming out someday in the far future, Star Citizen." I don't know if you've heard about it.
I've not heard about Star Citizen.
So Star Citizen's been in the works for ages. It was kickstarted, and they made a ton of money on it, and they're still running iterations of it, but they haven't brought the actual game to market. It might be next year, who knows. But they, when they approached Chuck for that, he said, "I can't do it, but I know some guys who can." And he gave them a list of 4 people, and I was on that list. So again, got an opportunity that I wouldn't have otherwise had from another author who literally just had a full plate at that time and thought, hey, maybe I should spread this around rather than just, say no and ignore it. Which you don't get, I don't think, in other publishers.
So and Baen has, it really is, when I was describing to some family members that what Baen is like, and how, Baen has like a readership that tries to read everything they can from this one publisher, and my family member thought, it never occurred to me to read, like, to focus on reading books from the publisher as opposed to just randomly from an author. And that's because Baen is like a family, that they really want to help everyone out. But on the idea of collaborations, you've touched on what makes it great, the helping each other's out. What are some of the difficulties that you've found, whether it's meshing with other authors' styles, or whether it's you're fast and they're slow, or vice versa? What is it that is the kind of difficulty of doing collaborations?
Well, we live in a miracle age where we can actually get on video and talk to somebody about stuff. So it's not like back in the day when Steve Sterling and Dave Drake were working on their collaborations. Was, I will send you the physical copies of the stuff, or I will send you a singular floppy disk that may get damaged in the mail, etc. No, we just, and we can look at it, both of us, in the real time as we do the collaboration. So they're really, so long as you know what you're getting into and who it is you're working with and what your expectations are of one another. For me, it's very freeing. With working with Casey, for example, was just awesome. It's one of the best experiences of my life, let alone of authoring. Simply being able to sit down and go, have a cheerleader. You write a chapter, and you give it to your co-author, and they go, "Yeah, what if we do this too?" And you go, "Yeah," and I get chills just thinking about it. It was that exceptional experience. So, but on the flip side, if expectations aren't lived up to, or expectations, and I haven't had this experience, but I know people who have. Yeah. If somewhere along the line things fall out, then you have to have mechanisms in place to make sure that the work gets done. Yeah. But then also that you preserve the whatever relationship you had in the first place. Yeah. Because that's the other challenge too, is offering cohesive and comprehensive advice, or when you want to change, how do you get the change? How do you get that change without offending them? And so you kind of have to put on almost an editorial cap on, and step back and look at it and go, okay, well, and certainly when it comes to having your stuff corrected or changed or tweaked, you have to really be as professional as it is humanly possible to be, not just for your relationship with the person that you're writing with, but also for your own mental health. Yeah. Because this isn't about me, just because it feels like it's about me, that I'm being corrected by someone who is my peer or that I look up to, that I have to, you have to take it as it is and absorb it and use what's useful and appropriate in it, but yet not be a doormat. Because some things are worth fighting for that you argue with. And that was one of the great things about Eric, was he would lay down an argument and wait for you. You would hear the clang of the gauntlet, and then you're like, well, maybe I need to figure out this. Is this something I want to die on? Is this a hill I want to die on? Or is this something I can just go, okay, yeah, I get it. Because he did not want to, for instance, Eric did not want to use rednecks.
Okay.
And I know that in 99 and 98, when the original transfer of the West Virginia mining town of Grantville to 1632 Germany happened, or 1631 Germany, happened, that Jeff Foxworthy was huge.
Yes.
And you might be a redneck if. And know that these hillbillies were laughing at this stuff. But he was like, damn it, no, never. And I was like, okay, that's not a hill I want to die on. Right? So you have to figure out how it is you're going to collaborate and what your position is in it too. And one of the things that Bain has been famous for is taking the master and the journeyman. Mm-hmm. And that's Eric Flint, master of alternate history. And he goes around with a bunch of journeymen. And sometimes with other masters. Yeah. Him and David Weber in those first couple of books, that kind of thing. So there are pitfalls in collaborations, and the biggest and most important one is setting out clear expectations and then living up to those expectations, or making it clear that you're not going to be able to as soon as you're not going to be able to. If you have to fall out of something, then you have to fall out of it.
Yeah. And you mentioned a second ago that you had worked with Casey Yazell. You had worked with her for Blackstone, the publisher, on a book called Second Chance Angel. And I was wondering if you could give us what the basic pitch of that book is.
It's a noir detective story about a kidnapping or possible a disappearance, about a deeply flawed veteran who was cashiered from the military for supposed bad acts. And in doing so, he lost his angel, his AI, that was responsible for protecting him and enhancing and modifying or monitoring his implants. So he still has some of the implants, and he has no angel. Another veteran disappears, and her angel is left behind. And she seeks out the one guy she knew, the angel knew, had contact with her, the person she was protecting, before she was shut down. And that's where it settles up. They start to investigate from there. So it's a very noir. It doesn't necessarily end with a happy ending, and it has a lot of personal cost for sticking to what it is you think is or believe is the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, Casey Yazell working on a noir project. I'm shocked. Shocked, I say. She never works on noir projects. But that's not your only collaboration that you have. You mentioned at the beginning of this working with Chuck Gannon, or Charles E. Gannon, and you worked with him, and you worked with Chris Kennedy on one of the books in the Kaneverse Terran Republic series, and I believe we have a copy of that here. Can you tell us a little bit about Mission Critical and what your part of the process was? So in this, I was actually the lead-off novella. So these were originally published by Chris Kennedy Publishing as novellas. And actually, this is the second novella that I had written for it, which was included in the original large omnibus of, I believe it's 6 novellas. That's the Murphy's Lawless book, also by Chris Kennedy. And then this novella, though, is the lead-off is taking the characters from that, which the original novella was titled Man-Eater. Okay. And it's the basic premise of that is it's time travel again. For somebody who doesn't like time travel, no, but they've moved forward. They were frozen, cold sleep soldiers. Many of them kidnapped or shot down and then kidnapped, that kind of thing, and then brought forward in the future to fight the war for humanity's enemies. And they, through a series of strokes of fortune from the Kane Riordan titular character, his actions and the actions of his allies, they are rescued, but they kind of have to effect a self-rescue in this planetary system called Rabak. So in the first book, they're trying to fight the good fight on Rabak,
And these characters that I have, they're the only ones. One of them Chalmers is the only character who's happy that he went through time, basically, because he was one step ahead of a federal investigation regarding his crimes under color of authority as a military officer, or warrant officer. So he is really happy to be out from under all that, and he decides that it's a personal opportunity for him to improve and to be a better person. So he continuously tries to not only overcome his own predilections towards taking the easiest path, but also everybody else's opinion of him from before, including his partner, Jackson, who has known him for basically his entire military career up to that point and knows what a dirtbag he can be. And he's trying to do better for Jackson and for all these other lost soldiers that he's with. Basically because they all need to pull together to survive in order that they can raise all the tide, which raises all boats. So in that first one, that's what they're doing on the ground. And in this Mission Critical, they're responsible for basically a heist wherein the goal is the smaller craft here, which is the tender that comes back and forth, basically the shuttle that comes back and forth to the larger spacecraft. And so they're hijacking basically a shuttle.
I've noticed in some of what you've talked about, some of these books, there is a theme throughout of military-related things. Or do you have a connection to the military, or is it just something that you just happen to be interested in or be able to be good at writing?
Well, yes, I've always been interested. The reason, so the warrant officer and the sergeant, Chalmers and Jackson, they're both investigators. They're CID. So they're investigating crimes within the military. Well, these particular, that was my background. My background was law enforcement, but I've always had a very deep respect for folks in the military. My brother was in the Army. My uncle was in the Army. And I have many, many friends, Casey, many, many friends who have done great service to this country, and I try and do them honor. I also, one of the things about sitting in a squad car for 20 years or so is that you tend to develop a sense of what it's like to be in the trenches with somebody and have to rely on them for your safety, and they have to rely on you, and I think that lends itself to writing some of the interpersonal relationships of the military folks and their experiences when they're in a situation like the lost soldiers are, or that kind of thing. But I'm also blessed with a lot of friends who have legit military experience, and some of them very high speed, low drag kind of guys, and being able to ask them hey, is this right? Does this work for you? And they'll be easily tell me, yeah, no. And you take that, again, that's one of those expectation things, right? So with this, almost everybody in this, especially in this book, we have me, who was a cop for 20 years. You have Chris Kennedy, who was an aviator, military aviator for many years, and you have Mike Massa, who was a Navy SEAL for many years. So Mission Critical has got a lot of kind of cool experience in it, as well as the Murphy's Lawless. You have an armor officer. I believe you have a can cocker. There's a bunch of different folks in there that have legit military experience that are putting it in, infusing the work with it. So kind of continuing that Dave Drake and Pornell and others, their experience as it translates into military science fiction and science fiction in general. Haldeman, all those greats that you may or may not have grown up reading.
I'm trying to read through the classics, but there's also so many new ones as well.
Yes.
And so balancing, finding the balance, and then of course, it's not just science fiction. I also read fantasy. There are so many books out there, and so working through the backlog is tough.
And more every day.
However, I do want to talk about some of your short fiction, which I have read, including World's Long Lost. I read all the short stories in that for a series of videos. That was so much fun. And we also have that book, and that is a short story collection about the idea is like other like planets that have been forgotten about, or planets that we don't really know the information about, and so it's worlds that are long lost. And so there's like, I think there's like 15 or 16 short stories in there, and they all follow those themes. And there's a lot of authors in there, and you have the final short story in that collection titled Retrospective, which not only is an excellent theme for the series, as it's the final one in the book, but it also works with that specific short story. Can you tell us a little bit about Retrospective?
So the very first novel that I wrote, the one that didn't sell, is in that universe.
Okay.
And one of the things that's going on in that universe is it was a cop, future cop story. And one of the things that was going on is there's a trade in artifacts. And those artifacts were found in that solar system, and it's called Nouvelle Genève. It's New Geneva, and they're doing this archaeological trade. And one of the characters in this, that Soul Boy, he is very, very old, because one of the things about solar system travel is that you have to jump. And when you jump, you do damage to your brain because you're existing in two separate locations at the same time, and it damages the nervous tissue of your mind, and eventually that leads to schizophrenia and other deleterious effects. So I had always had in my mind that yes, they were picking up these things, where they came from, etc. So I decided when this was coming up, I was going to tell a story of what happened, how they actually originally came across these artifacts, how Soul Boy started the trade. And so I had given this opportunity to write in this World's Long Lost, which is unassociated with other people's stuff, and it was something I could purely just kind of do my own thing. I really dug it because the whole idea, the premise of the artifact that they find, or the piece of the artifact that they find, or the piece of the being that they find, is from a discussion I had many, many years ago with a mathematician whose husband was a multi-dimensional mathematician. So he was theorizing about what multi-dimensional objects might look like to us. And one of the main critical things that stuck with me, and I don't know how true this was borne out by the numbers or anything else like that, was it would look differently every time you looked at it. Which is why in that there's this click, like he's like, we can't tell what he's seeing. Yeah, every time it's a color, it's a space, it's a taste, he keeps getting this image of what it might be. And because it's that extra dimensional, I was like, well, that's cool. That makes it a good stand-in for how inner solar system or galactic travel might happen, is through gates or through that transdimensional kind of thing. So that was where that came from. I'm very proud of that story because it also has somebody who is termed the broken. Their mental health has been just devastated by the failure of their conditioning to resist interstellar travel. And they're called the broken. There's no hope for them. There's no way they can be anything else. And the system is supposed to weed these guys out and not put them in the general population of the prison. This guy somehow makes it. And Soul Boy recognizes that for some reason, you find out at the end why, but for some reason he identifies with this madman who shouldn't be where he is, but he seems to hold it together, and therefore, why is he holding it together? And we find out why.
Okay.
So yes, very, very proud of that story. Not to mention it was one of my first times on the cover of an anthology instead of being T-Man Moore, which is always kind of a milestone. It's the first one is always I got in the anthology, yes, and then the next one is like I got on the cover of the anthology.
Speaking of which, I believe the one you're referring to is United We Rise, which is from the Black Tide Rising series.
Yep.
From John Ringo and Gary Poole.
Yep.
And I believe we have that one as well. That one is, I'm planning to start that series soon, and I believe it is like, it's set in America, but it's like kind of a zombie type storyline. Yeah, and that's an anthology in that series.
Yeah, it's a global pandemic that basically results in zombies. So the whole world has gone to crap, as it were. And this is as it's the fourth anthology. It's the first one was, how do we survive? The second one was, okay, so now that we've survived, how do we kind of project forward? How are we going to continue to survive? The third one was, all right, so we're kind of making it now. And now this one is, okay, we've kind of made it. We have some stable structures. We still have a threat from the zombies, but it's not quite as bad as it was. And one of the guiding things about John's work is that he destroys the world a lot.
Yep, I've read some of his stuff. That's accurate.
But he has he always has this kernel or this ray of hope running through it, that we can make this better if we make the right choices and if we pull together.
Right.
And that is really the very best of science fiction, right? There's a ray of hope. We just got to be able to see our opportunity, seize our opportunity, not be diverted by our differences, and continue forward. So yeah, it's an exceptional book. And what I did with this is that, as I kind of alluded to before, I was writing for tabletop role-playing games. I've been a lifelong role-playing gamer, usually running games. And the original story that I had in the second anthology, I think it was Alpha Gamers, and this is the continuing adventures of the Alpha Gamers. And it's basically my gaming group from California, how they survive the apocalypse without me.
So your character's not in there?
No. I am not a presenter.
You're not one of the zombies either?
No, I'm not a zombie either.
I know that there are some, like, I know the author Brandon Sanderson said he'll only do like a cameo in a movie or something of his if they get to kill him off. So it's like he wants to just die in every movie some way. Do you have any upcoming books that you can share or tease everyone?
At this point, no. I mean, I've got a few short stories in anthologies. We've covered a couple. We also have the noir anthologies from Casey Azell and Larry Correa. I'm in all of those, either alone or in combination with Casey. We have in not Down These Mean Streets, but in I can't remember the second one. We have a collaboration. It's a continuation of the Second Chance Angel. It's actually a prelude.
Oh, okay.
It's when Muck, our protagonist, is a bouncer, and how he kind of gets connected into the underworld, as well as makes a contact with a quest giver kind of character that we both quite like. But what I've got coming out is I got to get this third Mughal book, or the book for the 1636, and it's tentatively titled 1637, The Pilgrim's Passage, which is Princess Jahanara goes west to do Hajj, where shenanigans ensue.
Okay. And then where can people find you online if they want to follow you or find out about new stories from you?
I've kind of lowered my profile. I'm basically on Facebook, Griffin Barber. I also have griffinbarber.com, but I need to update it.
Gotcha.
I don't do it very frequently. And since Twitter and other social media, you kind of have to be engaged in that all the time to make use of it. I am limited energy at this point for that kind of thing.
I understand. I know, believe it or not, there's still a lot of authors that are even lower energy, lower profile on stuff because social media is just not their thing.
Well, and again, anything that detracts from your time actually spent
writing,
trying to do the writing, it's potentially a problem or an issue.
Right. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview with me today.
It's very much my pleasure.
And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.